Guten Tag, mein ass. Welcome back to Fraser Danger. Today we're going to be finishing up on the why I'm qualified to discuss political philosophy and modern political goings-on. When I first started paying attention to politics, I was about 12 years old. I watched a lot of Fox News. And the thing that I learned from that was that a lot of these people are incredibly biased. And to this day, I can't actually watch Fox News without becoming a little sick because of the propaganda-style artwork and tones that they use in order to almost like dog whistles for individuals who are susceptible to those sorts of things. But I went on, and I was about 16 when I was completely disenchanted with the conservative movement, especially that of the George Bush era, and I supported Obama pretty fervently because I believed that McCain was a complete psychopath and that he wanted to send my generation on the path to a 100-year war, which was simply brilliant. Absolutely, send me to fucking war for your corporate for your corporate overlords. Thank you. It's exactly what I want to do. And while we're at it, let's completely destabilize the Middle East for no reason. Perfect. Let's go for it. Matter of fact, send me down there right now because I have the urge to kill. That might be independent of that, though. So, moving on, we get to about 2012 election. Obama he gets elected, right? For the second term. And he fucks everybody over and says, no more Second Amendment, guys. We had the school shooting. No, not happening. Fuck you. In fact, during that period, I became an avid gun collector to the extent that I own too many guns now. I'm not gonna let that shit happen either. I'm a liberal, a true liberal, not a modern liberal. I am dead center of the political spectrum, slightly to the left and slightly to the south on the political compass. -2. That's me. And you can deal with it because I'm really not going to put up with any of the bullshit that they're trying to set down on me. It's just not going to happen. So, around that time, a little bit after it, I began seriously concerning myself with the study of political philosophy and political sciences and history, psychology as a whole. It was an important learning period for me because I became familiar with concepts such as neocolonialism and actual true liberalism. Things that stick with me today. Things that I identified with pretty quickly because it's exactly what we need in society to maintain our culture as it exists today, which is the single greatest achievement that I believe that mankind has ever come to, at least in regards to societal organization. The empowerment of the individual over that of the authoritarian regime, the sublimation of the collective for the purpose of empowering the individual, which then results in the empowerment of the collective, is perhaps the greatest achievement of Western culture, and it is in danger today because of the machinations of individuals who'd like to remove, for instance, the sovereignty of national states. And that is something that creates a disruptive spirit in me. I wish for nothing more than the opportunity to cause severe chaos for anybody whose intentions are such that they would like to dissolve borders, dissolve nation states, dissolve my ability to control my destiny through the greatest means of local control. Trade within that stricture is important, but it's even more important that I'm able to control my own destiny. That's what's big. That's what needs to happen. So I come out of the 2012 election thinking things are going to be okay. Obama, I remember him promising no new gun control or something to that effect. And following the school shooting, immediately he begins his march towards authoritarianism, which was the inevitable result of the Hillary Clinton fiasco. Now you can see this in the way that the political machinations of both parties, the two-party system within America, attempted to put off on us both George W. Bush's brother, Jeb Bush, and Bill Clinton's wife, Hillary Clinton. Jeb Bush was destined to lose that battle, obviously. But we didn't get that. The oligarchy was supplanted by businessman Donald J. Trump. And for that, I am extremely thankful, no matter how he runs his regime, as the left would like to call it. I'll call it a regime too if you want. My education, then, in regards to politics, starts early, but doesn't become mature until much later. And that's the way to look at it for me, is that I'm, in and of myself, someone who went through a number of political changes in my life. I've come through a large amount of leaps and hurdles in order to become who I am, philosophically. But I feel like at my base, I was always the same individual, at least in regards to my own political freedoms. Because no matter what they do in the schools, which, if you look at it from the right angle, you understand that they are actually just large brainwashing facilities designed to propagate propaganda to youthful masses. What was I saying there? It was important to describe that my education was exterior to that. I finished the 5th grade and went into the 6th grade and dropped out of school and began educating myself on a Christian electronic learning program known as Switched On Schoolhouse. I was in complete control of my education from that point on. Nobody has ever had any hand in my education. I fell through the cracks of the educational system to the degree that all we did was file 1 year to show that we had completed a number of educational programs, and past that, the government seemed to no longer care for my education, which is fine by me. I tested out with a SAT score at the age of 17, I believe it was, that would put me through all the things so I could jump right into a college. And then began going to college once I moved down to Florida. Now, right around the time I was 20 years old, I began studying political philosophy on my own as a hobby through the lessons of the Great Courses, the Teaching Company, and other books on political philosophy. I began taking in as much information as possible without even knowing strictly what I was doing, just educating myself. And today I've gotten to a point where I feel that I'm able to comprehend and describe more about what's going on in the world than most individuals my age have, even the slightest hint of a concept of. And that's because I chose to do something that most don't. And that's not to say that I believe that those people should be left out of the conversation. Without those people in the conversation, there is no context for the modern political discussion. There's no context for it because everybody has to take part, or else we don't understand what we're doing because we don't understand who we're playing with. Our partners in the great journey that is world politics. So, I would like to discuss some of the materials that I've been engaged in as a way to impress upon the viewer that I feel that I've undertaken something that could be useful in the discussion. Why you should listen to me, essentially. Now, it's important to remember that most people never learn a lot of the things that actually make up their history, but instead go through life blind to those aspects, never really understanding anything about what makes the world around them. Now, one thing I'd like to discuss right off the bat I just took a class on the early history of National Socialism. And I think I preferred to talk about Rules of Radicals first. But I think that this might be also a good starting point. Most people have no idea that Hitler really never had any intention on opening up a Western front to the degree that it was opened up. He was forced to by the treaty or pact between Poland and Britain. Now, I think it's a good thing that Hitler was ultimately defeated because his regime was extraordinarily intolerant and produced a living situation close to that of 1984 within it, as described by many people who did live under the systems of Nazi Germany, where the children of the families were encouraged to rat the little political misgivings that their parents might have to German authorities. And of course, the subversion of the family that was done through Germany in the Austrian state and others, which was to say that they taught the children that they were the revolution and that their parents really knew nothing and could not understand anything about them. It was enlightening, though, to understand that the greatest extent of Western society's troubles to do with Nazi Germany was actually not on the table at the time. He was focusing towards the East and wanted to conquer the East and open up the East as a place for living space, as he described it. Rules for Radicals was another book that I feel that was an interesting read. It describes something that to this day perplexes me and creates a number of emotions, mostly anger. Because I understand how Rules for Radicals was written as a biographical guide, almost. Just to describe how an individual might take in some information. It wasn't so much rules as it was just some guidelines that he laid out. One of the things he did, which I found completely unethical, is that he marched a black community into a prenatal and child care institution, which had been run out by the church leaders about a few decades ago in the timeline that we're discussing. He marched this community in there in order to demand this care. And the community had largely forgotten that they had run them out and were wondering why they didn't have it. So they're in there acting belligerent to this individual at the desk, this lady. And she keeps describing them, oh, yes, we'll do that. But then it's like, damn right you'll do it. Yeah, you'll do it. And essentially, he's forcing something that's not actually happening. He was creating a false narrative for these people to feel empowered by. But what it ended up doing was creating belligerence. Because this woman essentially kept trying to say, yes, we'll do this. Anything you want. It's not a big deal. Absolutely. All you have to do is come in and say so. But the way that they achieved it was to keep her from speaking and consistently demand it as though they were actually getting someone to give in to their demands rather than just requisitioning something that was freely available to them. And so these people marched out, and there was a lot of discussion as they were walking back. That's how you get things done. You force them to yield to your requests. And what we see today in the colleges like Evergreen, specifically, and other places around the nation which have seen radical subversionist activity recently, that is the direct result of this sort of behavior, which was encouraged by men like Saul Alinsky. And so it creates a fury in me to see that what he did was actually harm those people, ultimately. And that it could have been done another way. It bothers me. So, Adios America by Ann Coulter is another great one that I just read recently. If you want to take in 3 hours of the descriptions of the various child rapes committed by illegal immigrants, and the immigrants that are associated with the 1963, 1964, I forget which, Immigration Act, that's your read. If that's what you want to do, go for it. I found it disgusting. The there was nothing short of grotesque listening to the various incests and rapes that were committed by these Mexicans, illegal immigrants. It's horrific that we're allowing those people into this country wholesale. And I know that the argument is, oh, well, white people do that too. No, they don't. Not to that extent. Not to that extent. They don't do it like that. I'm sorry. We have a bunch of people in this country, and they're a minority, and they're still committing just ridiculously heinous crimes. They have to pull at strings to get the sort of things that these people do, and they don't report on them. And it's insane to think about it. Although, largely, I don't agree with Ann Coulter. It should be noted. Now, as far as my love for Lovecraft, that's not important. Voltaire and the Triumph of Enlightenment, that was the first TGC course I took, and it was something special. It was a good moment. I probably need to take it again in order to really understand it, but it was important to me at the time. The Psychology of Human Behavior is a wonderful little TTC course, on the motivations of human behavior. These are part of a large amount of psychology course that I've taken, which largely, because their information is so scientific that I've been unable to actually absorb anything specific that I can imagine right now. But that's going to occur a number of times, you'll see, as we're discussing this. Plated Up Postmodernism is a different category, but the same subject. These are numbers of courses I've taken which continuously repeated much of the same thing that I had already been through. And so they really just emphasized over and over again the same courses, the same subject matter, to the point where it's drilled into me subconsciously, but I don't actually have any conscious understanding or representation of it. The one thing I did come out of this is that at the end, the professor made a call to action, a call to conscious action against the postmodernist movement, because as he described it, it was incapable of actually achieving anything, and was actually had no end to the deconstructionist viewpoint through which its lens was able to see, or rather, more clearly, there was no logical conclusion to the postmodernist viewpoint. It literally has no end, and it's ultimately a tool for the total destruction of the society which it is used in, which I believe is part of a subversionist activity, in my opinion, as it was largely created by revolutionary Marxists and those sorts of people. And of course taken up because it was so interesting. It is interesting to deconstruct, but it should not be led into the general public as far as a thought process. It should not be influencing modern culture in that degree. Walden by Henry David Thoreau was an excellent book. Early days for me, I remember it quite clearly being just a very peaceful introspective into the life of a man who went out into the woods to live. Very great piece of literature. World religions, Buddhism. Buddhism is a death cult. That's what I have to say about it. I appreciate some of the values that it teaches, but largely Buddhism is a death cult, unfortunately. The Life of the Mind was one of those series, again, on psychology that it becomes a stream of information that I can't actually take in, but actually builds up upon me. It was something that I failed to mention earlier. You may not remember everything you read, but certainly those things helped create you and who you are today. That's a quote. I don't remember who made it, but it is definitely it's pertinent to this conversation. Sensation Perception and the Aging Process was an amazing course. Largely what I took away from it is how important early human development is in regards to the ability for a young child to take in information. When you're young, when you're 0 to 1, you need to be exposed to many elements in life in order to fully comprehend them later. It would be very difficult for a person to speak a certain language outside of the syllabic lexicon of the root language that you're in, if they have not been exposed largely to the syllables that are in the other languages. So it's important for a small child to be exposed to a huge variety of syllables, else they will not be able to learn languages later on in their life. It's very interesting because if you actually listen to it, the professor was sitting there stating over and over again to a taxi driver in Japan how he was wanting to go to a specific temple. Okinawa, probably not, but it's not so easy to pronounce for us. But he continuously said this to this man, and the man kept repeating it to him, and he was unable to understand him because the syllables were not in his mind. He simply did not hear the syllable. That is how important early childhood development is in regards to the syllables of other languages, if you wish to learn or understand those other languages is. Thinking about capitalism was another one which I learned a great deal. Considering the amount of information that these courses often pack into them, and the fact that you don't actually study them in course material unless you actually go out of your way to do so, it was larger stream of consciousness, but I did pick up the important factor in political philosophy, economic philosophy, the history of economic philosophy, where they believe that much of the modern economic sentiment of savings and earnings and just capitalism in general came largely from the Protestant culture of the Dutch, where it was believed that individuals, how God viewed them, the God's providence was viewed as directly reflected in an individual's material wealth. And so these people sublimated their urge to use their material wealth and instead saved and continued to accrue all throughout their lives. And this is the roots of modern Protestant economic capitalist culture as it exists today. So, let's see, world philosophy, stream of consciousness. Origin of the Modern Mind, Stream of Consciousness. Dreams of Final Theory, an excellent book on both modern physics and what might come from future theories. Tools of Thinking. Excellent course on a number of things, including the philosophy of fallacies, the rhetorical elements therein. And it's just one of those things where it just goes over different ways of rhetoricizing material. How conversation works. It's just a book on, if I'm not mistaken, just how individuals discuss and commune with one another, and it was just interesting as far as knowing how to present yourself during a conversation in order to either gain power or show respect. Paradise Lost, I read that twice. I wrote a pretty good paper on it. The professor, when I first started taking his class, this is the second class that I took, the professor had told me in the first class that he never gives out A's or hundreds unless it's completely deserved. And I was able to actually get a 100 on this paper, something I feel particularly proud about after writing it. It was about how somehow Satan had actually just always been part of chaos. It's convoluted, and I feel that postmodernist writing is always convoluted. And I don't feel that I was specifically influenced by modernism in that, but I think that it had something to do with it, because it was purely circular and it really had no point. In my opinion, it was essentially just random BS that I put into a paper, and it sounded good, and it made it look really good, because the arguments were sound, if circular. So, contemporary economic issues. That was an interesting read. I learned a lot about the savings elements of society and how Americans don't actually save. They maintain a debt culture, and somehow that works as a reverse savings culture. I don't believe in it. I think we should go back to saving like the Southeast Asians do, but that's just my opinion. Ideas in Politics was an interesting read. All of these were listens. Every single one of them. They were all audiobooks. In that it described to me in my first inclination that actual liberalism was a good thing, and that most people in America don't discuss liberalism as it actually truly is supposed to be discussed and as it truly existed. exists. We have an aberrational understanding of liberalism that is actually just leftism. So, explaining social deviance, stream of consciousness psychology. Great ideas in psychology, absolutely. Stream of consciousness psychology. Philosophy and intelligence and emotion. Stream of consciousness and philosophy is good reads, but these are all things that, for me, just don't actually come through as far as the elements, because these, again, are just things that I'm so over familiar with that the information becomes a big blur for me. Your Deceptive Mind was an excellent course on similar things to tools of thinking, in that it described logical fallacies and how easy it is to deceive the mind, and just in that the mind is so easily convinced of something given a number of sleights of hand. Einstein's Relativity and Quantum Revolution. This was just physics stuff that I occasionally took as far as that goes for the fun of it. Power of People, however, was an amazing course. I learned a lot about these many people. And I believe that there was information on Saul Alinsky, though at the time I didn't actually pick it up. I recommend the course to anybody who might want to start with this sort of journey of learning. Understanding the Fundamentals of Music was a great one by Robert Greene. He really impressed upon me a lot about music. More Stream of Consciousness, Theory of Social Revolutions. I need to take that one again. No Excuses, Existentialism and the Meaning of Life. A lot about Sartre, and my current views on Sartre is that he was a pretentious douche and also a communist. Don't like communism. Roots of Human Behavior, Psychology, Flatland. Right now we're here into the random books that I've read, and I've read a lot of the classics, which I feel is very good. Fahrenheit 451 is very prescient today because it describes almost to a T what we would be living in a society where everybody would erase the past in order to keep from offending people. This is exactly how things would occur. Brave New World, Canticle for Leibowitz, Out of the Silent Planet, The Way Station, all this just amazing. I read some of the child books too, but the Brothers Karamazov. Ah, man. So much of this. I did read Obama's book, Dreams of My Father. I also read Dinesh D'Souza, The Roots of Obama's Rage, which was where I came into the word anti-neocolonialism, which is an interesting concept, and describes exactly why third world political philosophy is as it is today. So that's it. That's all I needed to discuss with y'all is just that I felt that I wanted to prove exactly why I'm going to start taking a course of more political thought, describing my views on things going forward. It's just what I want to do. And I feel that I have to. I have a responsibility to put my thoughts out there. If they influence anybody, so be it. If they don't, that's fine too. It also just helps me clear my mind as far as what I believe is right. So going forward, we'll still be seeing a lot of YouTube style gameplay videos, which I love doing. That's the whole reason I started this. VR is definitely the most amazing thing that I've ever done. But it's just, we're also going to be seeing a little bit of the political philosophy that I've been influenced by coming out in my statements regarding contemporary events. So yeah, thank you for watching. My name is Frazier Danger, and we'll see you again next time, folks. This is something that's going to be occurring very soon, but I'm going to keep producing. Everything's done as far as I'm concerned that can keep me from continuing this process. So thank you, and we'll see you next time.